Join us for intriguing African stories coming to this platform in April.
Hello, my name is Bojide Jude. I'm a Nigerian writer, and this is my powerful story.
Hello, I am Lemundo Magangan, a Malawian writer, and this is my powerful story.
I usually pass by a hut, something mistaken for our home. All I could see with her was a transistor radio. I suppose that was the only asset she possessed.
Hello guys, my name is Masako Ivandi. I'm a Sierra Leonean writer, and this is my powerful story. Thank you all.
Join us for intriguing African stories coming to this platform in April.
When I was a student, it was very hard for me to earn a living. Things were very hard. We only had our parents to look up to. When they had nothing to give us, that day we would go to sleep on empty stomachs.
Join us for intriguing African stories coming to this platform in April. Join us for intriguing African stories coming to this platform in April.
Hello, welcome to the very first episode of the Power of African Stories. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ran a competition in sub-Saharan Africa, and the aim was to find talented writers who write very good short stories. And boy, oh boy, have I been lucky. In an introductory episode today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to examine the story written by a young gentleman. It's a real life story, and it talks about his struggles with a mental illness. Now imagine if you live in a country like Malawi, where beliefs are sometimes rooted in African traditions. And imagine if at a very young, impressionable age, you started hearing voices. And how would your life pan out if you were then diagnosed with childhood schizophrenia? Ladies and gentlemen, stay with us as we explore the real life story of a gentleman I've chosen to call Ezekiel. Ezekiel is a pseudonym. At this point, only Ezekiel and I know his real identity. And that's because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm protecting his identity because of the nature of the story that you're going to hear. Welcome to the very first episode of the Power of African Stories. And I'm your presenter, Bridget James.
Join us for intriguing African stories coming to this platform in April.
And I wanted to know when you started hearing voices, because you were at school, weren't you? How old were you?
Okay, basically with the way I wrote the story, it was like I was just reminding myself of what was happening, but I started hearing voices when I was 15, when I was in secondary school.
And what happened? What did you hear?
Okay, I was hearing voices like two sides of my sisters, like the other side from my father, the other side from my mother. They were quarreling for me. They were telling me to go to their side, and I couldn't remember everything, but then they were trying to tell me to follow their side. Each of them were telling me what to do, like, hey, come with me, follow me, do this, do that. And the rest was just confusion, but that's what I remember from the first time I heard the voices. I was hearing like my sisters were talking to me, like my grandfather and my grandmother side. Yeah, some.
Well, as you were, Ezekiel and I are writing a book and read. That was a big surprise. And the manuscript, ladies and gentlemen, the manuscript, it's well on its way. We are hoping to have a book, a physical book, by August this year. And that is going to be published by another publisher. So I'm already headhunting publishers in Southern Africa and also here in the UK. And there is so much to tell about Ezekiel's story. We're going to explore his diagnosis, stigmatization, African beliefs such as witchcraft, his day-to-day struggles with chronic fatigue, and how Ezekiel has used creative writing to overcome his struggles with schizophrenia. And now, unfortunately, he was then diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Blimey, what a brave young man. And Ezekiel isn't 27 yet even, And it's a beautiful, heartwarming story, and it deserves to be read in the book. So this is just a synopsis of the story. This is just some of it. And I hope you enjoy it. So when the book does hit the shelves, ladies and gentlemen, don't say, I didn't tell you it was going to be a bestseller. Look at me. So when it does hit the shelves, ladies and gentlemen, we will reveal who the lovely Ezekiel is. And I just hope he continues to stay well and he continues to be concordant with his medication, so we can have a very nice young gentleman who would present his story to us once we have a book. So tell me a bit about your background. Please tell me where you went to school.
Okay, so I've been to different kind of schools, but I'll start with the most, like the first one, because that was kindergarten. That was in Harvest Temple in Lilongwe, the capital city of Malawi.
And tell
my nursery.
And I wanted to know when you started hearing voices, because you were at school, weren't you? How old were you?
Okay, basically with the way I wrote the story, it was like I was just reminding myself of what was happening, but I started hearing voices when I was 15. That when I was in secondary school.
And what happened? What did you hear?
Okay, I was hearing voices like two sides of my ancestors, like the other side from my father, the other side from my mother. They were quarreling for me. They were telling me to go to their side, and I couldn't remember everything, but then they were trying to tell me to follow their side. Each of them were telling me what to do, like, hey, come with me, follow me, do this, do that. And the rest was just confusion, but that's what I remember from the first time I heard the voices. I was hearing like my ancestors were talking to me, like my grandfather and my grandmother side, something like that.
And were you talking back to them?
I was not, because I was still trying to figure out what was happening.
Yeah. So you had male and female voices. And
yes, but then I was thinking that I was imagining, because I wasn't sure, because I've never seen my grandfather from my father's side. So it's like I was just father's side was talking to me.
Yeah. And so when did it all come to a head? What happened then? Where did it all kick off? Because just from reading your story, there got to a stage when a lot of things are happening at home, where you were having arguments at home. But what happened? Tell me, when you started hearing the voices at school, what did your mom do?
Okay, my mom took me for medication because she was a professional nurse she was a nurse by profession, I should say. So she had to give me some medication. She was thinking that I had this mental illness, but then she wasn't open to me. She wasn't telling me what it was at first. She wasn't being open. So we were just trying out things that maybe it could be this, it could be that. But what was in her mind was that I was bewitched. That was the first thing that was her first hand thoughts, that she was thinking that I was bewitched.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that. So your mom, is she quite traditional, even though like she's an educated African lady? Does she still believe like in witchcraft and stuff like that?
Okay, right now my mom is no more, so I could say that she used to still believe in that because
My sympathy, and I just interrupt and say, I'm sorry, I didn't realize your mom had passed. And I'm so
no,
sorry.
no, it's fine, it's fine. But then she was so much into traditional beliefs that even before she passed on, she told me to go and visit a senior witch doctor so that she could be well. Then I had to say, no, you know what, mom? I think it's best for you just to stay where you are. Let's see what God is going to do for you. I believe that if you stay like this, continue with this traditional stuff, it will not end well with you. I believe that in the next life you won't be able to find peace because I believe that going to witch doctors is a sin. That's what I believe in myself.
Okay,
So
did you ever go to a witch doctor then?
herself, yeah, we used to go together. Like
So what,
together. The two of us, we used to go together.
so what did they actually say to you then when you went to witch doctor? Describe it to us. So you walked into this room, there's this person who is a traditional healer, which we call witch
Yeah.
doctors. So what was said to yourself and your mom? And tell us how you felt. We want to know the impact it had on you, because that must have been quite frightening for yourself.
At first, they would tell me that it was my intelligence which was messing around with me. When we went to another person, they would say something different. They don't say the same thing. Sometimes they might say the same thing, but mostly it's about somebody else who was behind what was happening with me back then.
Who did
It
they
was
say
very
was
frightening.
behind? Did they say it was your grandmother? Something like that?
That's what they say. They used to say that my grandmother was bewitching us. My
That's-
grandmother, my late father, my uncles. That's what they used to say.
So was it like your paternal grandmother that they said was responsible for casting a spell on yourself?
That's what they used to say. That's what they used to say.
And this must have been very confusing for a 15-year-old.
And about this thing, it started way back because I remember going to witch doctors way before I had schizophrenia diagnosis. It started way back because I could face problems as a young person as well. As a boy, I used to face problems. I would just have headaches out of nowhere. I would start crying because I could have these headaches. I would just have a mood swing. I would face a lot of troubles, and then I would be taken to witch doctors instead of going to hospitals or going for therapy.
Blimey, I mean, that just underscores our belief system in Africa, doesn't it? Where someone who obviously has this beginnings of a mental illness, rather than seek treatment from like a hospital, our people back home felt that they could resolve it through traditional means. Now, tell me, I also read that you were admitted to a psychiatric hospital at some point. How
Yes, I
old were you? And tell us how you found it. What were your experiences?
Okay, in the first place, I was just taken to hospitals as an outpatient. I wasn't being admitted there, but it happened that after my relapsing, after I went to college, my first year, I was sent back because I went away. I had to leave college because of the same illness. I think because I was just thinking that it was not right for me because the course which I was taking, I was thinking that it was not fitting me. So I thought of going to learn somewhere else. I did not know that that was the lapsing of my condition. So after it became a problem again, after I had to hit my mom, they took me to a mental asylum, which was called Bwera Central Hospital. It is in Lilongwe right now. It's still there right as of now. So when I went there, I was put in a room whereby there were other people who had the mental illnesses. But at first, I was put in the ladies section. I do not know why, but maybe it's because I was violent, so they were afraid that I would be beating some people and the people would retaliate and they would hurt me. That's what I was thinking. But then I don't know why I was put in the ladies section at first. That's what happened back then. I think this was in 2012. Yeah, 2012. 2000.
And
Yes.
tell us what the hospital was like, because when I came to
Yeah.
England back in the 90s, I told
Yeah.
you I went to university, and I told you the first thing I'd done was
Yeah.
I did mental health nursing. And I said,
Yes.
I told you that in the early days when I came to England, when I obtained a degree in nursing, I said I used to work in the NHS. So I've previously been a registered mental health nurse. And it was the back of that I went back to uni and I did criminology and social policy. And that's why, I then took an interest in police work. But I have worked in government hospitals here, NHS hospitals, and I'm familiar with people being sectioned. And I'm familiar with antipsychotics. So, I mean, when we've had several conversations, private conversations, you and I have told you I have quite a good academic knowledge of this area because I have worked as a registered mental health nurse. So I'm no longer on the register because I'm not to do police work. But were you informal or were you sectioned? Because informal patients are coming voluntarily. Were you put on a section at all, or do you understand what that means?
Here, you do not go to you go to the hospital voluntarily, of course, but then when you have a problem like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, what they do what's good for you, so they take you to the hospital. So I think I did not choose to go there, but I was taken because I had a problem and they wanted me to have a solution. So that's when I went there. And you asked me to describe what this hospital was. It was more of a prison because you would not even visit people outside. You would not see people outside. They would bring food to you inside there, and there were cells in there. And sometimes if you misbehave, they would beat us. That's what they would do. They'd beat us with these clubs which are being kept by guards. They would beat us. That's what used to happen that side.
So you're telling me that the nurses, the mental health staff in Malawi, who were there
They weren't nurses, I should say. They weren't nurses. There were some security officers, I think.
Okay.
But they were stationed there in the mental health facility. That's where they were stationed.
And what
I think
they
it's
used to beat you with? Can I just interrupt? Because that has really...
Okay, they used to beat us with plastic sticks, which are so hard and stiff. The ones which are being kept by guards, the security guards, they keep these kind of sticks. They're shaped as a gun, but then it's not a gun, it's just a stick. But then it's plastic, but it's very tough plastic. It hurts so much.
Yeah, so like a cane, like some kind of...
Yeah, something like a cane, yes.
So, I mean, was that the way they contained what was perceived as violent behavior? So what they did was they end up beating inpatients.
If you were misbehaving, let's say you were beating other patients, you were doing things which they did not want you to do, instead of handling you properly, or maybe I should say that was the proper way of handling people like us, but they used to beat us. I remember being
Can I
lost.
just stop you there and say, you keep using a lot of terms which I have to correct, because don't forget, I was registered in the UK as a nurse, and I've worked as a police officer. And there are certain expressions that we don't use, and I have to use the correct expression because this is the public platform, and also I don't believe in stereotyping people.
Okay.
We don't use the word misbehave, we use the word triggered or heightened. So when you were heightened because of your schizophrenia, which we're going to talk about in a bit, when you were heightened because of your schizophrenia, then you would act out what was going on in your mind. And often you would take this out on people who were there, you take it on other patients. Because maybe they were, maybe they were the ones that triggered your behavior. So, I mean, tell me a bit about schizophrenia. How would you define it? Because we need people to understand what it is.
Okay, schizophrenia, it's something which plays with the mindset. To me, it's different because right now I'm way better off, because even some people do not even know that I have this condition. I have to tell them so that they have to be like in good terms with me. But then I still hear some voices now and then. It's like now they're just thoughts. But I know that these are the voices which I used to hear back then. They're just thoughts.
They're what they call intrusive thoughts.
Yes, they're intrusive thoughts. Yes.
So what do they, how do you hear these thoughts? Are they persistent?
It's something which just tells me to do something, and then I have to say no. I have to disagree. Maybe I shake my head and then I react in a way that if someone could be seeing, I would be thinking, what is he thinking about? They would say, what is he thinking about? What is he doing? But then
So
it's
you
something which
react to
I react
non-visible
to these thoughts.
stimuli. So we say
Yes,
to non-visible
yes,
stimuli, you react to something
yes,
that people that do not suffer with this mental health condition would not
yes.
react to. So you still have auditory hallucinations. This is what we call them. And do you have visual hallucinations as well? Do you see things?
I wouldn't say I see things. I don't recall seeing things, but I think back then I used to see things back then. But right now I do not see things. I don't.
So tell me about how you perceived by people when they knew you were unwell. Tell me how your society where you live in. Please say the name again because I'm very bad at pronouncing names.
Right now I live in Nino.
So tell me how they reacted to people like yourself when you probably were going through a crisis or when you're there, were you somewhere else?
Okay, right now I've just gotten here, so I wouldn't say I know how they react to people like me. But then the places where I used to live back there, it was kind of difficult because even when I had some side effects, let's say there's a problem with my mobility or the way I walk, or maybe I'm seeing like I'm not walking so well, and I would see people would be laughing at me.
So people make fun of it. Yeah.
Yes, they would be making fun.
There's a lot of social stigma, isn't there?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
But then if we get close and I start talking to them, they would act as if nothing is wrong, and we'll talk and have a conversation. But I would still know that even if after I'm gone, they would still be talking about me. But then it affected me in ways that I failed to have normal relationships with people.
Yeah.
I did not quite complete my education because even right now I don't have a degree. I just have a diploma, which I think if I did not have this condition, I wouldn't have just a diploma. I would maybe I would have maybe a master's degree by now, because with the way I was doing well at school back then, I would be somewhere else with my education. So I think this condition, it held me back big time.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, as you were, Ezekiel and I are writing a book, and so that was a big surprise. And the manuscript, ladies and gentlemen, the manuscript, it's well on its way. We are hoping to have a book, a physical book, by August this year. And that is going to be published by another publisher. So I'm already headhunting publishers in Southern Africa and also here in the UK. And there is so much to tell about Ezekiel's story. We're going to explore his diagnosis, stigmatization, African beliefs such as witchcraft, his day-to-day struggles with chronic fatigue, and how Ezekiel has used creative writing to overcome his struggles with schizophrenia. And now, unfortunately, he was then diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Blimey, what a brave young man. And Ezekiel isn't 27 yet, even, And it's a beautiful, heartwarming story, and it deserves to be read in the book. So this is just a synopsis of the story. This is just some of it. And I hope you enjoy it. So when the book does hit the shelves, ladies and gentlemen, don't say, I didn't tell you it was going to be a bestseller. Look at me. So when it does hit the shelves, ladies and gentlemen, we will reveal who the lovely Ezekiel is. And I just hope he continues to stay well, and he continues to be concordant with his medication, so we can have a very nice young gentleman who would present his story to us once we have a book.